Hello, Podheads, and welcome to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. I'm your host today, Holly Spear,
And I'm Kylie Colwell.
and we are just going to jump right in today. Mother's Day of 2020 began like any other quiet spring mountain morning in the mountains of Colorado. A husband left early for work, two daughters were away on a trip, and a mother who loved the outdoors was expected to spend the day riding her bike. But that evening went wrong. Phone calls went unanswered, a bicycle would be found abandoned, and over time, what appeared to be a tragic accident would unravel into one of the most complicated and controversial murder investigations in recent memory.
I know this one and I'm pissed all over again. We haven't even started.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a really, really good one. It's twisty, so get ready. So it's May 10th, 2020, in Salida, Colorado, and this is where Suzanne Morphew lived with her husband Barry. And it's Mother's Day, like I said, and Susan is a mother. She's a mother to 20-year-old Mallory and 16-year-old Macy. Susan had grown up in Alexandria, Indiana, and while in high school there, she met Barry at a golf course, actually. Barry had grown up in Alexandria, but was a few years older than Suzanne, so they didn't like cross paths. Barry and Suzanne were the perfect match, though. Suzanne was popular and smart, and Barry was athletic and driven. At one point, he was even drafted to play for the Toronto Blue Jays, but he got injured, which is how he ended up back in Alexandria. But if he hadn't come back home, he wouldn't have met Suzanne. And after he did, the two were completely all in no time. They quickly decided to follow each other to college, and they both attended Purdue University together. But it wasn't long after that when Suzanne received terrible news that she was sick with lymphoma at just the age of 20 years old. Barry took such good care of Suzanne, though. He took her to chemo, he nursed her when she was sick, and he was there for just about everything, in sickness and in health, even when they weren't married yet. Suzanne finally beats her cancer diagnosis, and the two get married in 1994. They both graduated from college. Suzanne went on to be a teacher, and Barry started his own landscaping business. The two knew that they really both wanted kids, but they were told that there was a high probability that this dream may not be possible because of Suzanne's past sickness. But the two had high hopes, and they prayed and dreamed, and it got answered when Suzanne got pregnant, first with Mallory and then with Macy. After that, Suzanne decided to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom. When their oldest Mallory decided to go to Colorado for college, Suzanne and Barry decided to follow her. Suzanne just wanted to be close to Mallory, and I think it was mutual. Mallory really wanted them there too. Plus, Suzanne and Barry loved the outdoors. Barry had a passion for hunting, and Suzanne for being in nature. They had dreams of moving out that way someday, so Colorado just made sense for them. So they settled in Salida, Colorado, which was known for being the spot for people that had a passion for outdoor recreation. There was hunting, hiking, mountain biking, walking trails, fishing, everything you could want. The family got cozy in their new Colorado cabin, and life was seemingly perfect. So it's Mother's Day, May 10th, 2020, and this Mother's Day, Suzanne happens to be alone. Both of her girls were on a camping trip in Idaho, and Barry is working at a landscaping job on a site in Denver, which is about 150 miles away. So Suzanne pretty much has the day to herself, which is fine by her. She probably would just have more time to go do something outside, hike or mountain bike. A perfect Mother's Day in her book, probably. Mallory and Macy hated being gone on Mother's Day, but they were at least going to call or text and wish her a happy day. But strangely, when they texted their mom, she did not reply. They texted again, and still nothing. So this was odd. So they call their dad, and their dad, or one of the girls, one of the two, called the neighbors and asked if they wouldn't mind going over and checking on their mom. A neighbor goes over to make sure everything's okay. They knock on the door, but no one answers. The neighbor calls Barry back and explains that no one's answering the door or making any noises in the house, although Suzanne's car is there. So Barry's concerned now. Suzanne had told him earlier that she was planning to go riding that day, but she should be back by now. So he asked the neighbor to go and check and see if Suzanne's mountain bike was there. I guess they probably kept it in the garage. So the neighbor goes in, and sure enough, Suzanne's mountain bike was gone. So this is goodish. Suzanne hadn't been abducted or anything. She's just out riding her bike, but she should be home by now. and she's not answering. So the thought shifts to she might have gotten into a wreck or she got lost. Barry is in Denver. So if he calls the police in Denver, it's going to go to the Denver Police Department. So he asks the neighbor to go ahead and alert the police and tell them that they may need help finding Suzanne. Barry, in the meantime, rushes back home to try to figure out what's going on. Police immediately start to look for Suzanne. They know the drill. Like I said, this town is known for outdoor activities, and a large portion of it is covered in woodland. Actually, 1.1 million acres is covered in woodland of this town. So people are getting like lost and injured out there all the time. And not too long into their search, they actually find Suzanne's mountain bike. It was off the trail not far from their home, down an embankment. The bike was damaged like it had been crashed. Barry finally makes it home. He had about a 3.5 hour drive. And by the time he makes it home, it's dark. Police tell him that the good news is they found her bike, but the bad news is they did not find her. And she likely had some kind of accident. Barry is understandably distraught. His mind is racing. His first thoughts were she had an accident. She hit her head. She's confused. She's lost. Or maybe she got attacked by an animal. Literally anything is possible at this point, but all Barry knows is he has got to find her because it's dark now. Suzanne's friends and family show up and help search for her. Police start with Barry. Where did he see Suzanne last? What was the last thing that she said? What were her plans for the day? Barry tells police the last time he saw Suzanne, he was leaving for work at 5 a.m. She was still asleep in bed. Like I said, she had previously told Barry that she was going on a bike ride that day. Police ask if they can search Barry's house, and he hands over some of Suzanne's clothing so that they can give it to the search dogs. Barry very willingly complies. Police find Suzanne's ID and wallet are still in her car, which is pretty normal. She probably wouldn't take those things on a bike ride. But what is kind of odd is that her sunglasses and her backpack, which has her like hydration pack in it, is still at the house. And Barry's like, okay, this is weird. She always takes these items when she goes to ride. Also, they can't find her cell phone. Days go by and Suzanne is still not found, although searchers do find her bike helmet. But oddly enough, it's not found anywhere near her bike. The helmet was found on the side of the road. So nothing's adding up. She leaves things behind that she normally would take. Her bike equipment is all over the place, and they see no trace of her walking away from this quote bike accident. So Barry is desperate at this point. He gets on Facebook and he posts a video pleading with the public to help him find Suzanne. He offers a reward of $200,000 for anyone with information and speaks to Suzanne, saying that if she's out there, her family loves her and misses her. He ends up doing hundreds of hours of interviews with news and journalists, willing to get the word out about his wife in any way possible. Meanwhile, the police's search and rescue operation pivots to a missing person investigation. It becomes obvious that if Suzanne wasn't lost or injured, something nefarious could be going on. So they start to treat it more like an investigation. They start with those closest to Suzanne, as they usually would, who would want to hurt her. Investigators start to uncover, as they usually do, that no one's life is as picture perfect as it seems. They find out that Suzanne had recently found out that her cancer was back. She was going to have to go through this whole fight again. The family found out right before their move to Colorado, but they decided to continue on with their move because it was just best for their family at the time. They needed a fresh start, and this was because, unfortunately, Barry and Suzanne's marriage was struggling. Suzanne's sister told police that Suzanne had told her when she got sick before, she had relied on Barry to do everything for her, and now that she was better, not much had changed. He did everything. He made the money, he decided how they would spend it, he made everyday decisions, and it had begun to bother her. She said that sometimes she felt like she was just a trophy in his life, but not much else. The sister says that she even maybe picked up on Suzanne trying to tell her a little something about some infidelity by Barry at some point, but she wasn't sure. They had been through it together. They were going through a big transition. They'd been married a long time. Their daughters were grown. One was going off to college. And now Suzanne's sick again. And that's pretty much it. They'd just been through so much and needed a new start. This was Barry's take, at least. But he loved his wife. They were just struggling, and rightfully so. Other than these little bumps, police could not find any information about anyone that would want to hurt Suzanne. The days are now turning into weeks, and there is no trace of Suzanne. Nothing. And I can't even imagine how this feels like the unknown. Obviously, everybody's thinking about Nancy Guthrie right now. So just to have a family member like disappear with no trace has to be horribly brutal.
And the circumstances are weird. It's like, okay, bike accident. Did she wander off? Did someone hit her with a car? Did a killer attack her in the woods? Did an animal get her? Like, there's so many
Yeah.
options.
I mean, my first thought would be like, okay, she has had a wreck and hit her head. She's confused and she's wandering around in the woods with like a concussion or something. That's what I would think. And that would
That's,
just be horrible to think that.
see, that's what I would think. But then after like days go by, and now
Yeah.
weeks, we're like, okay, something
Yeah.
else.
But I don't know, 1.1 million acres. I feel like you could just like wander around and then just like I hate to say it, like succumb to the injury, like the wilderness or like a animal get you. I don't know.
That's true. They got some weird animals out there.
That's true. I don't know. Mountain lions, bears, tigers, oh my. I don't know. It would be a horrible, horrible situation to be in as a family. But, anyways, the Morphew family is feeling this. They're devastated. The girls cannot cope without their mother, and Barry is even worse. He's getting what little sleep he can on the couch because he refuses to sleep a night in the bed without Suzanne. Days are turning into weeks, weeks into months. And about 4 months after Suzanne vanished, her brother Andrew decided he couldn't just sit around anymore. If law enforcement wasn't going to find her, the family would start trying. So Andrew and the family organizes this massive citizen led search effort. Volunteers come from all over, teams spread out across the rugged terrain, hiking trails, wooded areas, steep embankments. They even brought in boats to comb through nearby waterways, scanning the water for any sight of Suzanne. What's striking is that Suzanne hadn't even lived there for very long, only just a couple years, but people are still showing up. Strangers give up their time to search for a woman they barely knew. But behind the determination, there was a shift in tone. This didn't feel like a rescue mission anymore. Family members were starting to accept the heartbreaking possibility that this was not a search for a person who was still alive. With nowhere else to turn, police start looking into Barry more. Of course, people on social media start theorizing that Barry might have had something to do with this. People were kind of shocked when apparently he didn't attend one of Suzanne's vigils and he wasn't seen at all of the searches. But Barry willingly gives almost 30 hours of interviews to police in what he sees as himself trying to find his wife. Police get different opinions. Some people believe that they needed to look more into Barry, and a lot of people felt like police were digging for somewhere where there was no answers. Suzanne's sister, Melinda, would later share something with investigators that added even more weight to this case. 2 days before Suzanne disappeared, Melinda received a text message from her, and it wasn't light, it wasn't casual. Suzanne wrote that things with Barry had reached a breaking point. In part, she said that he had been abusive, emotionally and physically. She admitted that she was filled with anger, not at just him, but at herself for what she had tolerated for far too long. Melinda described their dynamic to investigators in a way that painted a very different picture from the love story that everyone had once believed. She said Barry was dominant, strong willed, and controlling, and Suzanne was gentle, passive, kind hearted. According to Melinda, Barry had a tendency to overpower people, to intimidate them to get his way. And if that text was any indication, Suzanne had finally reached her limit. And 2 days later, she was gone. Barry has never wavered from his version of events. He said that he got home around 3 p.m. on May 9th, the day before Mother's Day, and that he and Suzanne had a normal, pleasant evening together. Nothing out of the ordinary, no big fight, no tension, just a quiet night at home. The next morning, he says that he left early around 5 a.m. He headed to this landscaping job roughly 3 hours away, and according to Barry, the last time he saw Suzanne, she was sleeping in their bed. But when investigators start working to confirm this timeline, checking receipts, phone data, travel logs, something unexpected shifted the direction of the case. Inside the master bedroom, detectives discover something very unusual. They discover a spy pen. This is like literally what you would see in the movies. It is a pen that looks like an ordinary like writing pen, but it's used to secretly record conversations. And it wasn't Barry's, it actually belonged to Suzanne. Investigators would learn that Suzanne had allegedly purchased it to record her husband because she suspected that he had been unfaithful and she was trying to catch him in a lie. And that spy pen did capture evidence of an affair, but not of Barry's. It recorded Suzanne and a man named Jeff. And the conversation that they were having was not one of just friends, and it was immediately obvious to police that Suzanne was the one having the affair. So her spy pen like backfired a little bit.
I need to write this down. Spy pen. Good idea. Oops.
Oh, oh, be careful. Be careful with that spy pen.
If you lay it down somewhere, don't forget about it.
Yeah. So that backfires a bit. And just like that, as you can imagine, the case now takes a sharp turn. They have to find out who this other man is and what he knows about her whereabouts. Because up until this point, no other man has like come forward and been like, "Oh, I know her." Like we're having this thing, which I can see why you wouldn't want to do that because you're like, it's an affair, but it's also a missing person and she could be dead. So what are you doing?
I could see the thought processes as like, okay, no one knows about me. If I
Mm-hmm.
come out and say we're having an affair, I could be suspect number one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially if you know anything about true crime, you're like, okay, yeah, I know where this is gonna go.
It's either the husband or the boyfriend.
Yep, always. So at this point, investigators didn't even know who this Jeff was. They had a first name, no last name. Investigators eventually identified Jeff as Jeff Leibler, a married father of six living in Michigan. So Jeff and Suzanne had briefly dated in high school, but their relationship had ended and decades passed without any contact. But then in 2018, around the time that Suzanne and Barry moved to Colorado, Suzanne reached out to Jeff unexpectedly through Facebook, and her message was simple. It said, "Howdy, stranger." From there, the communication escalated quickly. According to investigators, Suzanne and Jeff began speaking almost daily. What started as reconnecting turned into a nearly 2 year long extramarital affair conducted largely through digital messaging. In the months after Suzanne disappeared, Jeff did not immediately come forward. Investigators ultimately located him and learned that he had taken steps to conceal the relationship. He deleted his social media accounts and messaging platforms that he had used to communicate with Suzanne. So, kind of like we said, he's just like disappearing into the background. He was like, I'm just going to pretend I was never here. Jeff acknowledged the affair, but he told agents he deleted his accounts because he didn't want to damage Suzanne's reputation after her disappearance. He also admitted that he was worried about his own family finding out about the affair, obviously. His wife, his family, his job could all be ruined if he came forward. At that time, Jeff expressed his concern that investigators might view him as a suspect. So, during questioning, he directly asked whether he was being considered a target of the investigation. Although Jeff didn't initially volunteer information, once investigators made contact with him, he was more than cooperative with them. He agreed to provide access to his DNA, phone records, and passwords from the deleted social media accounts and messaging accounts. Through forensic analysis, including data recovered from iCloud backups and phone records, all the things, investigators were able to reconstruct much of the relationship between Jeff and Suzanne. The records show not only frequent communication, but also confirmed that the two had met in person multiple times. Investigators determined that Suzanne had traveled out of state on several occasions to see Jeff. Trips included like destinations like Louisiana and Florida, so they're kind of just like meeting in random places. Digital evidence also revealed the depth of their relationship. The two exchanged intimate photographs, discussed their future together. They even spoke about the possibility of marriage. At times, they even discussed leaving the United States and starting over somewhere else, like another country. So then police, that's kind of in their back of their mind, like, did she just decide she wanted to disappear? By this point, investigators had a clearer picture. Suzanne was engaged in a serious, long-term affair, one that extended far beyond online messaging. Investigators had likely found the last person to talk to Suzanne, too. Records show that Suzanne and Jeff exchanged 59 messages the day that she disappeared, and that's significantly more than their typical daily communication. At one point that afternoon, Suzanne sent Jeff a selfie, and investigators would later refer to it as her last proof of life photo. Barry was obviously not home at that time. The messages between Suzanne and Jeff became increasingly intimate as the afternoon progressed. At 2:05 p.m., Suzanne texted, "I'm just so in love with you. What are you up to?" Jeff replied a minute later with a flirtatious response. "I'll spare you." Suzanne indicated that she would switch to WhatsApp, a messaging platform that the two frequently used, and then at 2:11 p.m. she confirmed that she was logged on. Then at 2:26 p.m., Suzanne received a text from Barry saying that he was headed home. He said, "Done, headed back." There was no indication that Suzanne ever responded to that message. Investigators do not know whether she saw it or whether she was distracted by her ongoing conversation with Jeff. Barry sent a follow up message asking, "Did you leave?" And again, no response from Suzanne. Around that same time frame, investigators observed unusual activity from Barry's cell phone. According to the authorities, his phone appeared to move around various areas outside the home when he returned. Detectives questioned whether this activity suggested a confrontation had taken place. When asked about this irregular, phone pings around the property, investigators pressed Barry to explain what he'd been doing during those moments. He said that he was walking around his property shooting chipmunks. According to Barry, chipmunks were a persistent problem at their home, and he claimed that he had been outside dealing with them that day, moving around the yard with a firearm.
Mm,
But that explanation quickly became a focal point for investigators because they tried to verify this, like maybe find a shell casing in the yard or like a dead chipmunk somewhere, but there wasn't. Another factor that complicated matters for Barry was how extensively he had spoken with law enforcement. He participated in like 30 to 40 interviews, often without an attorney present. He spoke not only with local county detectives, but also with state investigators and members of the FBI. While Barry claimed that he was fully cooperating just to find his wife, this gives investigators lots of opportunities to compare details, timelines, and inconsistencies in all of his stories. First, investigators needed to dig deeper into Jeff's involvement and rule him out in any way. Jeff stated that he was in Michigan at the time that Suzanne disappeared, and phone data and other records supported this claim. Ultimately, authorities determined that he was not in Colorado and cleared him as a suspect in Suzanne's case. When detectives confronted Barry with the evidence of Suzanne's nearly 2 year long affair, he claimed he had no knowledge of it. He denied knowing anything about Jeff or any ongoing relationships. That raised a critical question for investigators. If Barry truly didn't know anything about the affair, what possible motive would he had to harm his wife? But investigators weren't relying solely on the affair to establish motive. During forensic analysis of Barry's phone, they recovered deleted messages from Suzanne sent just days before she vanished. In that message, she wrote that she was, quote, done. She no longer cared what Barry was doing and that they needed to resolve things, quote, civilly.
that's a motive.
Yeah, she's wanting to end things. He's allegedly very controlling and dominating. So it's motive enough. We know that people have killed for a lot less. So,
They don't know that he doesn't know about the affair, but all he would have to do is just open her phone and read her WhatsApp messages or Facebook messages.
right, right. Even if he doesn't know about the affair, it's motive enough that your wife is leaving you. We know that that when women leave relationships is like one of the highest probabilities that they're going to be harmed by their spouse, especially if there's ongoing abuse in the relationship, which there's claims that there had been. So, it's all investigators really need. From the prosecutor's perspective, the theory began to take shape this way. They believed Suzanne had reached a breaking point and was preparing to leave the marriage. If Barry became aware of that, whether through confrontation, suspicion, or discovery, investigators theorized that he reacted impulsively. Their daughters were away on a camping trip that weekend, and according to prosecutors, that window of time when Suzanne was alone and the girls were out of town created the perfect opportunity. Cell phone data became a significant focus. Between 2:47 p.m. and 10:17 p.m. on May 9th, a span of just under 8 hours, Barry's phone was placed on airplane mode. During that time, location tracking was disabled. Prosecutors argued that this period was crucial. They theorized that while the phone was offline, Barry could have been cleaning up a crime scene or disposing of evidence without leaving a digital trail. Because traditional cell phone data could not account for his movements during that window, investigators turned to a newer method, digital vehicle forensics. By extracting data from the onboard system of Barry's Ford truck, they were able to review detailed information about the vehicle's activity, including movements, doors opening, and other operational data. So, according to authorities, the data received from the truck did not fully align with Barry's statements to investigators. Surprise, surprise. In effect, they began using the vehicle's own internal data to challenge his account of what happened that afternoon. Prosecutors pointed to several pieces of digital vehicle data that they argued were especially damaging. First, Barry told investigators that on the evening of May 9th, he went to bed around 8 o'clock p.m. However, Information extracted from his truck's onboarding system showed that around 9:30 p.m., the vehicle was shifted into reverse and moved approximately 96 feet closer to the house. Detectives said that this movement could have been significant, possibly consistent with loading something into the vehicle. The next morning's timeline also raised questions. Barry had initially stated that he set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. on Mother's Day and left the house around 5 a.m. to drive to a job site in Broomfield near Denver. But according to the truck's digital data, the vehicle's doors were being opened and closed closer to 3:30 a.m., earlier than what Barry had indicated. Investigators believe that he may have departed sooner than he reported to them. At that same time, there was another unexplained gap. Between approximately 4 o'clock a.m. and 8 o'clock a.m., the truck system recorded no activity. Prosecutors suggested that this 4-hour window was significant as it left a period of time unaccounted for by the vehicle data. So, to investigators, these inconsistencies between Barry's statements and the digital evidence became critical to their theory of what happened in the house surrounding Suzanne's disappearance. Investigators acknowledge that the truck's digital system doesn't always capture like every single action in perfect sequence. It can't provide a complete uninterrupted timeline, and some events aren't recorded, and certain data can be overwritten over time as the onboard system cycles through stored information. So, in other words, it's not a permanent black box like logs aren't, they don't last forever. So, if Suzanne's body had been moved or concealed during that 4-hour gap in activity, the vehicle's data would not definitively prove it.
I'm
You
still
got,
amazed about how much data they got from that to begin with.
I know, and I'm surprised that they don't use this kind of stuff more often. It just seems like so crazy.
Yeah, well, he backed the truck up 96 feet. That's insane.
Yeah, you did that, so why were you doing it? Like, it's just, it is very damning to me. Like, where were you doing? They should use that more often. I like it. So they're not just going to completely rely on this truck data, they're also going to use Barry's own statements. He told agents that when he left the house early that morning, he turned left instead of right. So it's a little thing, but he explained that although it was still dark, he remembered seeing a herd of elk in the direction. It's pretty dark, so I don't know. That's what he says. And as a hunter, he said he was curious and he wanted to take a closer look. That detail stood out to investigators because it placed him in a very specific area. And that becomes significant because it was that location where Suzanne's bike helmet was eventually discovered along the side of that road. So, to investigators, Barry's admission that he had diverted from his route that morning was meaningful. They theorized that if he didn't turn left, it could have provided an opportunity to discard the helmet in the area where it was ultimately found. And at approximately 8:10 a.m., the truck's onboarding system resumed recording activity. Around that same time, Barry's cell phone also reconnected to the network, allowing investigators to track both his phone and his vehicle movements as he continued toward Denver. According to location data and surveillance footage, Barry made multiple stops after arriving in the Denver area. Investigators documented that he pulled over at a bus stop and discarded something in a public trash can. He then stopped at a hotel, a McDonald's, and a dumpster at a Men's Warehouse parking lot. And later, he returned to the hotel to discard some additional items. Authorities obtained surveillance images showing Barry at one of these locations, though the footage didn't clearly reveal that he was throwing something away. Investigators theorized that these stops were deliberate, that he was disposing of potential evidence in multiple locations to make recovery more difficult. Barry offered a different explanation. He told agents that he frequently had excess debris and miscellaneous items in his truck from work, and he preferred to discard them in public trash receptacles rather than pay landfill fees. He characterized his actions as not criminal. However, investigators questioned why someone would go to like multiple different trash cans along several different locations rather than just dispose of them at one trash can all at once. Just strange. To them, the pattern of multiple stops appeared to be like intentional. He's just like trying to like throw away these things in multiple different locations so they can't like track him as easily.
I don't think I've ever thrown something away in like somebody else's dumpster.
I don't think I have either unless it's like big boxes. Like moving, like I'll have a bunch of big boxes and I'm like, I'm gonna take this to a big trash can. I don't think you're supposed to do that, but
It's illegal, right?
I'm sure it is. I didn't do that. I'm just kidding. But like, I'm not gonna stop and throw trash away at someone else's dumpster, like out of my car.
No, and I'm not gonna go to multiple dumpsters.
Yeah, like Barry's not that clean. I don't buy that.
No.
So, one of Barry's employees was later interviewed by investigators, and he told them that when he entered the hotel room Barry had checked out of, there was a strong odor, something that he described as smelling like bleach or chlorine. And investigators noted the comment because such a smell could obviously suggest recent cleaning activity, although no definitive forensic conclusion was established from that. Shortly after 6 o'clock p.m., Barry began to drive back towards Salida, and while en route, he spoke with the sheriff's deputy, who then informed him that Suzanne's bicycle had been located near a ravine not far from their home. He arrived at the scene at approximately 8:40 p.m. In the days that followed, Barry publicly offered his cash reward for information leading to Suzanne's return, and then later increased it to the final $200,000. As the investigation continued, detectives uncovered additional text messages Suzanne had sent to a close friend. In those messages, she expressed distress about her marriage. She indicated that Barry would not discuss divorce, that she felt no peace when he returned home, and that she did not feel safe being alone with him. With the growing body of digital evidence, conflicting timelines, and Suzanne's own statement about her marriage, Barry became the primary focus of the investigation. Prosecutors would later outline a theory of how they believed Suzanne was killed, though at that stage, many questions still remain unanswered. As the investigation stretched on, detectives executed search warrants at the Morphew home and examined the family's vehicles. Throughout that period, Barry continued speaking with law enforcement, often at lengths, and remained the central focus of the case as weeks turned into months. Then, investigators focused on what seemed like a minor detail. During a forensic search of the home, a clear plastic cap was removed from the family's dryer. To prosecutors, that small item was significant. They believed it to be a protective cap from a syringe, the kind used to load tranquilizer darts. From there, a new theory emerged. Prosecutors alleged that when Barry returned home on May 9th, an argument escalated, and he may have actually used a tranquilizer dart, what you would use on an animal. Remember, Barry's a hunter, to incapacitate Suzanne. This is wild. Like spy pins, like tranquilizing darts. Like, what the is going on?
This is some James Bond shit.
It it really is. No like tranquilizer rifle was recovered from the home. However, Barry had already acknowledged to investigators that he was experienced with tranquilizing equipment, and he admitted that in the past he had used these darts to sedate deer so that he could remove their antlers. So I don't know why you're telling police why you're telling police this, but he apparently did. Maybe in those 30 to 40 interviews that he gave without a attorney.
Illegal poaching, murder.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, oh, this is fine. I
This
can
is
tell them
a
this.
this is a
Uh,
little better.
yeah. Investigators documented photographs from Barry's garage showing deer mounted heads and piles of antlers, consistent with his statements about deer hunting and tranquilizing animals. Barry told agents that when he first moved to Colorado, he saw a large deer on his property. He decided he wanted those antlers. He openly described shooting the animal with the tranquilizing dart so he could cut their antlers off. He acknowledged that it was illegal and told investigators they might find tranquilizer related materials around his property because of this like hunting activity he was doing. Prosecutors later argued that his familiarity with tranquilizing darts, the syringe cap found in the dryer, would support the theory about how Suzanne may have been subdued. Experts that were consulted during the investigation explained that when you use a tranquilizer dart on like a large animal, like a deer, it would not immediately like collapse like we think it would. Depending on the dosage and the placement, it can take anywhere from several minutes to upward of 20 minutes for the animal to fully like go down. Prosecutors applied this concept to their theory of the case. They argued that the movement of Barry's phone around the property that afternoon was not consistent with him casually walking around the yard, like shooting these chipmunks, if you remember, if that's what he said. Instead, they suggested it could reflect someone moving around quickly, possibly following or pursuing Suzanne after she had been struck with a dart, but before she was fully incapacitated. So let that sink in. They think that Barry, when his phone is pinging, he is not like walking around shooting chipmunks. He's actually like chasing Suzanne around as she is slowly being put to sleep from this tranquilizing dart.
He's hunting his wife.
He's literally hunting her like on their property.
Disgusting.
Yeah. So in May 2021, nearly 1 year after Suzanne's disappearance, and despite the fact that her body had not been located, Barry was arrested and charged with her murder. He retained a team of prominent defense attorneys based out of Denver. That summer, Judge Patrick Murphy presided over the preliminary hearing where prosecutors laid out their evidence in open court. The purpose of the hearing was to determine whether there was sufficient probable cause for the case to proceed to trial. For the first time, much of the prosecution's theory, the digital data, the alleged motive, the tranquilizer dart evidence, was presented publicly and scrutinized in detail. During the preliminary hearings, the defense also highlighted information that undercut parts of the prosecution's narrative. A manager from the Holiday Inn told investigators that the odor of chlorine in the hotel room was not necessarily unusual. The room Barry stayed in was located directly above an indoor pool, and the manager indicated that this chlorine smell was like always present. That explanation weakened the suggestion that the scent was tied to Barry's cleaning activity. But an even more significant development emerged from forensic testing. Investigators had swabbed the interior of Suzanne's vehicle, including the glove compartment area. The results revealed the presence of unknown male DNA, and that DNA did not match Barry. When that finding became public, it posed a serious complication for prosecutors. The presence of an unidentified male DNA inside Suzanne's car introduced an alternative possibility and raised new questions about whether someone else could have been involved. For the first time, the strength of the case against Barry faced a major evidentiary challenge. The unknown male DNA recovered from Suzanne's vehicle was compared to Jeff, and it did not match him either. However, investigators determined that the sample was a partial match to DNA connected to an unknown male linked to assaults involving other women in other jurisdictions. The match was not a confirmed identification of a specific individual, but it was enough to introduce another unsettling probability. The discovery raised a troubling question. Could Suzanne have encountered a third party, potentially someone with a historic violence against women? This is just like very, very strange. And I don't even know what to make of this still, but it wasn't a full match. It was a partial match to a male who has had previous altercations with women.
If you have like unknown DNA in your car, like, okay, valet, or even if like you give a coworker a ride home and like their husband's like
Hmm.
DNA is on their shirt and it gets on your seat, like you've never met the husband. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like it
right.
transfers very easily. But the fact that it just like happens to be a partial match to someone with that kind of history,
Yeah. And I don't know if it was in her glove box or if it was on her glove box. Like to me, I guess it doesn't make that big of a difference, but I get it kind of does because like if you said like if you're valeting your car, you're doing something, but like if it's inside the glove compartment, like less people open compartments of your car
you
than
know
if you're
what?
just like on the bottom of your shoe or what have you.
I guess like a mechanic.
A mechanic. Yeah, and that was another thing that was brought up was, someone could have worked on her vehicle. And then what DNA have those people come into contact with? Like, we don't know. DNA is great, but it's also, depending on where you find it, it may not mean as much as you think it does.
Context is key.
Context is key, yeah. Prosecutors maintained their theory focused on Barry. The presence of unidentified male DNA complicated this narrative and provided the defense with an alternative angle. It introduced reasonable doubt about whether Suzanne's disappearance could have involved someone outside of the marriage. Investigators later claimed that the unknown male DNA found in Suzanne's vehicle was at least a partial match to this person connected to three unsolved sexual assault cases in Phoenix and Chicago. So the profile didn't identify a specific named suspect in the case, but it linked to an individual whose DNA had been collected in connection with those cases. So that's just really confusing to me, but those cases had not been confirmed of who it was, but it partially matched DNA that was collected at the scenes of those cases.
They just didn't have a DNA, enough DNA to make a full profile, or if it's like this person is related to the guy who did those assaults.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That could make a difference too. So that prompted a critical question for both sides. How would DNA tied to an assault in other states end up in Suzanne's car in Colorado? When the preliminary hearing was concluded, Judge Murphy delivered a measured assessment of the evidence. He stated that the proof was, quote, not evident and that the presumption was not great that Barry had committed this first-degree murder. Language that signaled he had concerns about the strength of the state's case at this stage. However, he ultimately ruled that there was enough probable cause for the case to proceed to trial. The judge emphasized that this decision was based on viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the prosecution, which is the standard required at a preliminary hearing. Barry remained in custody for several months until he was bailed out, and the court had actually set his bond at $500,000 cash only. He was released under strict conditions, including wearing an ankle monitor and to remain within the county. Barry's homicide trial was scheduled to begin on April 28, 2022. In the months leading up to that date, Judge Murphy recused himself from the case and Judge Ramsey Lama took over. Barry's defense team filed multiple motions alleging that prosecutors had failed to provide discovery materials in a timely manner. Among the issues raised at the handling of potentially exculpatory evidence, including the unidentified male DNA found in Suzanne's Range Rover. The defense argued that critical information, partially forensic data, had not been disclosed according to the required deadlines. In April 2022, Judge Lama issued a significant ruling. He found that prosecutors had repeatedly missed deadlines and failed to turn over important discovery materials as required. While he did not conclude that the conduct was intentional, he described that the pattern was negligent and bordering on recklessness. As a sanction, the judge barred 14 prosecution witnesses from testifying at trial. That list included several expert witnesses, including those specializing in DNA analysis, cell phone data, and vehicle forensics, testimony that had formed a major part of the state's case. The ruling dramatically weakened the prosecution's position just weeks before the trial was set to begin. On April 19, 2022, just as pretrial hearing was set to begin, District Attorney Linda Stanley filed a motion to dismiss the murder charge against Barry. The dismissal was entered without prejudice, meaning that the charges could be refiled at a later date. In her written motion, the DA cited the court's ruling, including several key prosecution witnesses. With a major expert testimony barred, including DNA and digital forensic experts, the state argued that it could not proceed effectively. The motion stated that without that critical evidence and without Suzanne's body having been recovered, the prosecution could not move forward in good faith at this time. The dismissal of the case was a surprise. Neither Barry nor his attorney nor his daughters were reportedly given advance notice. So you can imagine how happy they were all at court. In the same filing, the district attorney indicated that investigators believed that they were close to locating Suzanne's remains. Court documents referenced a remote mountain near the Morphew home that authorities intended to search once several feet of snow had melted. The implication was clear. Although the charges were being dropped for the moment, the investigation itself was far from over. For more than 3 years, law enforcement continued building the investigation. And then, in September 2023, a breakthrough came. Human remains were discovered in a remote, shallow grave in Colorado, roughly an hour south of where Suzanne lived. Those remains were positively identified as Suzanne Morphew. In April 2024, an autopsy was released by the coroner's office, and it concluded that Suzanne's death was, in fact, a homicide, although there was no clear signs of trauma. What investigators did find, however, were powerful animal tranquilizers in her bone marrow, the same drugs that Barry was known to have access to. That discovery renewed momentum behind the case. A grand jury in Colorado reviewed the evidence, and on June 20th, 2025, Barry Morphew was indicted on a single count of first-degree murder in connection with Suzanne's death. Authorities arrested him in Arizona and extradited him back to Colorado to face his new charges. Prosecutors emphasized in the indictment that Barry was the only private individual in the area with access to the specific sedatives found in Suzanne's remains. They also referenced digital evidence, including cell phone and vehicle data. They say this conflicts with Barry's earlier accounts and events that allege that Suzanne's remains may have been moved multiple times after her death. Despite the indictment, Barry has maintained his innocence. In January 2026, he made a court appearance in Alamosa County and formally pled not guilty to the charge. His attorney entered the plea on his behalf, and Barry agreed to waive his right to a speedy trial, something required under Colorado law unless waived. Following his 2025 arrest, a judge set Barry's bond at $3 million, which he was able to post with the help of his supporters. Barry was released from custody under strict conditions, including house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor, and surrendering his passports. And as of now, his new trial date has been scheduled for October 13th, 2026. Yes, this year. So, this is an ongoing case, and I will definitely be following along to see where this goes, but I think I have my mind made up, although there's so many twists and turns, but I think I know what I think. So, what do you guys think?
I'm definitely voting for Barry.
Yeah, I think my money would be on Barry.
He did kind of do a good job for a
Yeah,
bit.
honestly, for someone who is just a normal person, seems to be a normal person, yeah,
The biggest thing about this case that gets me, and I will never be able to understand, is the daughters still side with Barry, that he
yeah.
didn't do it.
I feel like it's so easy for people to just believe what they want when they've had a traumatic situation happen to them. But then you have those, kids or family members of killers who are like, yeah, no, we don't, he did it and we don't have a relationship with him anymore. So I feel like it could just can go both ways, just depending on the people.
Yes, you believe what you want to believe.
Yeah. But also, like, if I was his daughters, I would be like clinging on to the evidence of the unknown male DNA that was, well, the known, quote, unknown male DNA that was found in her car. I'd be like, okay, there's a chance he didn't do it.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, she was having an affair, like, who's to say she wasn't having more, like,
Right.
locally?
If I was her kid and I just needed to believe something that it wasn't my dad, it might be a little bit easier in this case than some of the others we've talked about.
They better be live streaming this one.
Yeah, honestly, we better get to see this one because it's going to be very interesting because, like I said, a lot of the things in the first trial didn't get, well, there was no trial date, but they didn't get admitted into evidence. So there's a lot of unknowns that the public doesn't know too because they haven't had access to it. So,
The judge in the case says that it will not be live streamed.
no, I hate when they do that.
I thought this was a free country. Anyways,
Yeah, but we had certain rights. Okay, so should we hop into overtime?
let's do it.
Okay, Kylie has a great overtime topic today.
We were talking on the phone the other day about how men should not be allowed to purchase home decor without supervision.
Right.
So that got me thinking, what are other things that straight men should not be allowed to do?
Good clarification, straight men. If you are a gay male, you can pick out home decor and it's probably preferred that you do. But if you're straight, you should probably just stay away from that? Yeah, don't. I don't know if you were thinking about this when you came up with this topic, but Luke and I just moved into a new house. He picked out one piece of furniture. It's like a log holder for like firewood, and it's got cast iron deer on them. And yeah, no, we can't be having that.
It's not allowed in the house.
Not something that's not your business to be doing. So you can't do that. You just can't. You must stay away. I don't think grown straight men should, I don't know. I was gonna say should be like going to the nail salon. It is always a little bit strange. But I like them to be hygienic. So okay, I don't know.
Do I take, a double look when I see a straight man in there? Yeah. Do I think all men should go get their feet filed down? Yeah.
Yeah. So it is hard. Maybe you can do that, I guess, but let's just stay away from like full pedicures. Like there's no reason for you to get like a clear coat.
Get the cuticles taken care
Yeah.
of.
Okay, what else?
I have a long list.
Oh, good, good.
One, order a frappuccino.
Yeah, yeah, we must stay away from that. Get back to
Ho-
work.
Honestly, any adult.
Agree.
Two, go to the grocery store without a list approved by your partner and or roommate.
Yes. I saw a TikTok the other day that was like you send your boyfriend or husband to the store and you realize that your phone is on silent and then you have to like run and look. You have like a list of like, is this the right egg? Is this the right flour? Like they can't do it by themselves, so they just should probably not.
There's all those posters like, damn it, I just got like a mail Instacart shopper. And they'll send a picture, they're like, there's no bananas. And they'll send a picture, and then the bananas are like in the photo.
Literally.
I think hanging any like piece of decor or anything from like the rear view mirror of the car.
Yes, no. Yeah, we shouldn't do. Honestly, they need to be banned from putting stickers on the back of their car too, because if I see a really obscure, stupid ass sticker, I know who's driving. You know what I'm saying?
It's an old white lady or it's a straight man.
Yeah, here in the South, I can pick them out. It's a straight man.
I said, buy nice candles.
Yeah, no.
They need to have candles, but you are limited to the ones you can find at the grocery store. I shouldn't see you in Bath and Body Works or Yankee Candle.
Yeah. Your Walmart is where you get your candles, and that's just the end of the story.
Ask for assistance in reaching something at the store. You better climb your ass up the shelves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Asking a worker to check for something in the back. If it's not out there, go home.
Yeah. Yeah. These are so great, Kylie. Yes.
Similar, use coupons.
No, that's just now these are turning into icks.
These are icks turning into rules.
Right. As they should be.
Cartwheels.
Yeah, no.
Can't remember last time I've seen a grown man do a cartwheel, but just imagining it makes me sick.
Yeah, that's disgusting. We can't have that.
Blow on their hot food. Just sit there and wait.
Yeah, there's no reason for you to be blowing on your food. We're not babies. We have to go past that.
Last thing on my list is drive a Lexus. I've never seen, I don't think I've ever seen a man drive a Lexus, and I can't imagine it. Like, that's a girl
Yeah.
car.
Or like a Cadillac.
I've seen a lot of black men drive Cadillacs.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
A white man in a Cadillac would throw me off
Yeah, a white male in a Cadillac would be detrimental
to
to
society.
society. Yeah. There's just certain things that they should also just like certain cars that they shouldn't have, like brands of cars. Like they can have an Audi, but they can't have like a nice car. But you could have like a sports car, Audi. You could do that. But you can't have like a sedan. You don't need to be doing that. You know what I mean?
No, you know what? I feel like Jeep Wranglers have become girl cars.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially if it's like the four-door Jeep or like
Yeah.
the nice, what are they called? Like the Wagoneers and stuff like that. Those are girl cars. Boys, you can stick to the four-door. That's all that or the two-door. That's all you can have. I mean,
Range Ro-
Hondas are kind of girl cars. They are girl cars to me.
yeah. Range Rovers are for the girls and the gays.
Yes. But Honda specifically like the cars. Honda cars are girls. Like you could drive one if you're a guy and you have like the bigger one, but not the just car. This
Like the
is showing how much
Civic.
I know how much like the cars are what they're called, you know? Is it a sedan? Is it a car? I don't know.
I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know what a sedan means.
Or like I think it's like, yeah, I don't know if I do either, really.
Is that
I
just like a
think it,
little car?
no, I think it's a bigger car. Not a crossover, you know, like a big one.
But not an SUV.
Yeah, not yet an SUV.
So it's a medium.
Yeah, I think it's a medium. Oh my gosh, we're gonna get drugged for this, Kylie. Drug, absolutely. Let the hate come in. At least you're commenting.
This isn't a car podcast.
Yeah. If you wanna listen to podcasts about cars, baby, this is not for you.
We could honestly do like a whole episode on just like me and you dealing with our cars and
Yeah.
the shit that's gone down with us driving.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I honestly think I'm to the point where I don't need to have a vehicle. Like I need to have a vehicle emotionally and physically. I need to have a vehicle, but like it's gotten to the point where I'm not sure I should have a vehicle.
Well, don't let the DMV hear this, Holly.
I know. It might be good for me if they did.
Do you need to go retake the test?
I mean, I'm just gonna say it's a miracle I passed it the first, second, third time. So
The third time.
the third time, yeah, I think I took it 3 times. It's a miracle. I'm gonna say right now they should stop people that have failed 2 times. They should be done.
Well, then neither of us would have a license, Holly.
I that's what I'm saying, girl. I don't know if I should. I'm not sure it's for me. Not quite sure.
I mean, listen, I would be a better driver if I like driving, but I don't care. So I'm not going to put any effort in.
Yeah. That's another thing a male should never do is be in the passenger seat. Get in there and drive the car like a man. Goodbye.
I want to be the passenger princess at all times.
Yes. And I should be. Sometimes I have to drive and it's honestly makes me so mad. Send this to all the males. Send this to all the males in your
All the listeners, forward this to 5 males.
life. Here's your challenge for the day. Okay, and with that, I am gonna go write Luke's rule book. We will see you next time on another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you liked our episode and you like us, you can like, subscribe, follow, give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate you guys all the time. Anyways, even if you don't, but it would help us out a lot because we are just doing this for funsies. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.